Let me welcome on board now Anurag Mantri, the Group CFO and ED at Jindal Stainless, joining in on the show right now. Anurag, hi, morning. Good to have you on the show. Let me first begin by talking about your domestic volumes because they've seen a solid 7% uptick despite the continued influx of imports. Help us understand how big is the problem of rising imports and by when do you expect a resolution to this?
Aisha, as you rightly said, the imports are continue to surge in the country, and especially if you see the two countries, China and Vietnam. And Vietnam is also largely the Chinese imports which gets routed through Vietnam. They are actually at all-time high. Vietnam imports in the last quarter itself has increased by almost three times as compared to that. So if I give you the perspective our total consumption of the country, 35% are actually almost 35% is met by imports currently, which is which is not good for the Indian stainless steel manufacturing segment. So we continue to work with the government and to give us the level playing field on that. And having that said, because we continue to focus then on the upper end segment and the premium segment and help government building the good infrastructure, railways. So our focus remains to work with the government on to supply the premium quality materials for the railways, highways, and process engineering and the new age sectors like ethanol, electrolyzers, power projects. So so while we continue to focus on that, but unfortunately these non-quality imports are creating too much of a problem in of the unbranded and unorganized segment. So we have been working and we have continued to request with the government, and hopefully the government should take cognizance of these based on the data and give some resolution to this.
Right. The other thing I also wanted to ask was about the export demand environment right now. How is it when it comes to the international markets? And is it still very sluggish? And which markets you think are sort of exerting post pressure?
So exports, frankly, are not increasing what we were expecting at the beginning of the year. So our largest export markets are actually US and Europe, and Germany is one of the largest export in terms of the country is the largest country where we export. Uh, Germany's economy is not reviving, so that's one that's putting pressure. So most of the European economies, we are not seeing much of the GDP revival happening at this stage. Second, this Red Sea crisis as well as the West War crisis is putting further pressure on the freight, which is making our export to these countries more unviable. So if you see H1 versus H1 last year, the exports have come down from 15% to 10%. So that's actually a big deterrent because of these freight costs as well as the lowering of the economies. Especially in US and Europe, actually, which are not helping us to improve the export. Though we continue to try to work on the mitigating measures, and we started in the new geographies like South America, South Korea, Middle East, Japan, Canada. We are also planning to start gradually. So this will eventually help us in gaining some ground on the exports, but obviously it can't replace the larger geographies like US and Europe volumes. So therefore, we are actually expecting this year we will not be able to achieve 15% export, but only just 10% export.
You know, we're also hearing about a slowdown in demand across the board, pretty much. And domestic is what I'm talking about, be it auto, be it consumer durables. Help us understand what's the on ground situation in the domestic market specifically. And if you could give us some color on which sectors are looking like a drag right now, and where is it that demand is still pretty much intact?
Okay, so domestic side, we are seeing a very good growth momentum, I must say, on the stainless steel side. And also, especially the government focus on to build a sustainable infrastructure. So if you would have seen Honorable Mr. Nitin Gadkari has also made a statement and policies on that on the coastal areas, on the highways, more and more stainless steel to be used. Just to give you the perspective, India loses almost $100 billion on the only on the corrosion related losses. And if we use the sustainable metals like stainless steel is one of them, and sustainable solutions, 25% of this can be clearly arrested. So $100 billion is almost like an infra budget of the country. So there is a focus which we are happy that government is trying to bring more focus on the sustainable metals like stainless to be used. So we are seeing demand from across, say, process engineering industry is one where we across like power plant, dairy, ethanol, sugar, the hydroelectrics, all these we are seeing a good demand coming up. The second is that on the infra side, as I mentioned, because of the government push. The third is the railway, because railway, like even now, Vande Bharat coaches are now largely 100% stainless steel bodies. In fact, on a high-speed bullet trains, which government was planning to import earlier, they have now recently decided to make it domestically, and it will be largely based on stainless steel. So this will again be a good push, and it's bringing down the per coach cost almost to a half. So that's also so with these sustainable solution work with the domestic manufacturer, the country's cost will also come down. GDP will also get arrested. So it will be overall a win-win for the country. So
Right.
domestic demand, we are very, very bullish on the domestic side of the demand. Only thing is that it should not be taken away by the Chinese imports, Chinese or Vietnam imports. So that should be addressed quickly, because the domestic demand benefit should go to the domestic manufacturer.
Right. Just wanted to understand about your volumes, because the volumes in the H1 of this financial year saw a rise of about 4.7% or so on a year-on-year basis. So do you now go ahead and maintain your guidance of 20% growth for FY25 by any chance?
No, so 20% of the guidance, because we are not seeing right now the export market reviving, especially our key export market, Europe and US, and the freight cost is also 3 to 4 times higher because of West Asia crisis and the Red Sea crisis. So this is putting further pressure on our export margin. So so our export will be down from 15 to 10%. So but we will partly make up some of the volume from the domestic market. So we are saying that we will not be getting to now 20% guiding range, but we will still be able to achieve by partly mitigating from our domestic market to 10 to 15% of the guidance range by the end of the year.
Right. Also, I wanted to understand about your EBITDA per ton. I wanted to understand that sort of a figure. If you could tell us where it is headed, do you think that with the trend that you are currently seeing in globally as well, so are you expecting the EBITDA per ton to be headed in H2 from about, from where are you seeing it headed in H2 actually, from the current levels in Q2 that you've seen of about 17,833 per ton?
So H2 we are expecting to recover better than H1, obviously. So we are saying that for the full year we should be able to meet around 18,000 of EBITDA per ton guidance. So H2 in that perspective should be better. If you see last 3 quarters, we have been increasing Q4, Q1, Q2. We have been gradually and sustainably increasing our EBITDA per ton through focusing on the good product mix, on giving more and more better solutions, and doing those type of products. So we are expecting that H2 should be better than H1 for sure. And we are saying that around end of the year FY25, we should have around 18,000 per ton of the EBITDA guidance.
Capex, timeline looking like, because there was an approval for 5,400 crore rupees to expand your capacity. What's the utilization mark right now, and what are you going to subsequently increase it to, say, in the next 3 to 4 years?
So out of 5,500 crore capex of this year, almost half have been spent in H1, and we are on track. In fact, I'm happy to share that some of the capex which we think, especially the Indonesia nickel project, which was expected to be commissioned by end of FY25, we have almost actually beginning of FY26, and we have now commissioned it almost 8 to 9 months ahead of the time schedule. So which has started. This thing. So all the capex projects are on track. We are currently 3 million ton, and by FY27 and with melt capacity which we are putting up currently will be 4.2 million ton. So we are on track on our year-on-year capacity increase to cater to Indian market growth there.
Okay, great to have you then, Anurag, on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
There comes a time when your heart calls for you to arise. Plant your feet solid into the ground. Decide your own limits. And then break right through them. Become something more. It's my time to rise.